certified trainer for the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. So, yeah, I got to write this down. Take it away, Quintin. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you again, Elizabeth and Marwan, for inviting me to moderate this panel. And as someone who had a headache with standards and labeling issues when I was agriculture counselor in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, I understand how important this issue is. So today we have two of our panelists here, and we have Rafiq Umar, who I introduced yesterday. So he's a chaplain imam at the University of Albany. And so if I were to go into the real long introduction, I spend most of my time talking about his career. And of course, we all know that, excuse me, I need three hands, but we have Nihad, Awad, Executive Director Council on American-Islamic Relations at CAIR. And he said a moment ago, you guys in here, I'm not the real expert, but I believe he is. He just doesn't know it yet, because I'm going to make certain that he is the expert before we leave. And so the whole issue of standards, halal standards and labeling, I can talk all day on the issue, but I'm the moderator. So Rafiq, can you give me your thoughts on the issue and where you think it's going with respect to halal?
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أما بعد. So first I want to say thank you again for introducing me and for having me here. The question again was my thoughts on halal standards.
Yes. So on the state of halal standards and labeling, where do you see it?
So first, I think it is relevant and important to really define what a halal standard is. I think if we talk about halal standards, we need to know what we're talking about. And most consumers don't understand what a standard is. They look at the Quran, they look at the Hadith, they say, you know, this is our standard, which is but we have different madhab which have standardized the source material and the source text to have understanding of that. So standards are essentially a way to pass an issue in an Islamic. So to look at the fundamentals deriving from that principles, making istinbat, extrapolation of principles and understandings based on what is the foundation of our belief. My thoughts on the current situation of standards is that essentially we have a lot of attempts at solving a very challenging and difficult problem. So across the world, in different regions, in different areas, you have different ways of approaching this problem, i.e. therefore different standards. And why, maybe the answer I want to give is this may and it may not be a problem. It may be a problem and it may not be a problem. Because we have competing views on almost everything in Islam. Sure, there are some core things that we as Muslims believe and we accept. That is our aqidah, that is the deep-rooted understanding of belief. And even within that, there are certain differences of opinion. But differences of opinion are not necessarily a bad thing. Different ways of viewing things are not necessarily a bad thing. And one example comes to mind is that the Prophet ﷺ, peace and blessings be upon him, was approached by Umar. I'll keep the story short, but he was approached by Umar, one of his foremost companions, and he was approached because Umar heard this other companion of his reciting the Quran in a way that the Prophet had not taught him. So he was very upset, and he brought him and he said, listen to how he is reciting the Quran. He was angry. So I didn't hear from you this way. And so the Prophet said, recite, iqra, read, recite. He read. And then he told Umar, read the same verse. He read it differently. And he said both of them is correct. So the point is that elasticity, differences of opinion, different ways of viewing things has merit and it has a foundation in Islam. So that's my short summary.
Beautiful, I tell you. Before I ask, should I say Awad?
Yeah.
Nihad. Before I ask Nihad to weigh in on the, I guess, legal perspective, let me just add a few points about standards and labeling that'll sort of put it all in better context, which we have not done. There are different parties. Habib talked earlier today about the labeling and issues as a certifier, and how certifying bodies have to deal with this issue of standards and label. It's a very difficult issue. And then you have government entities that are also involved. You have accreditation bodies, which Peter talked about, and he used to work for one actually. And those accreditation bodies are actually the organizations that are giving accreditation to the certification bodies. So you're dealing with one body giving authorization to another body. Then if you're exporting internationally, there is the government of the UAE, for example. So when you deal with standards and labeling, you're dealing with three, in the case of the law, three governmental entities, and they all are looking for things. And as Habib was saying, that if you're going to export a product, for example, to UAE, it's different if you're exporting to Saudi Arabia, you're dealing with the Saudi government. If you're exporting to Malaysia, you are dealing with the Malaysian government. So there's a lot involved. And one of the things that's very difficult is if the standards are not clear and labeling requirements are not clear. So I just muddied the waters up for you.
Now you see how difficult it is.
Yeah, so I just muddied the waters up for you. And so, how do we get out of this? And how do we work so that standards could be somewhat more universal than what they are now? Right now, it's a hodgepodge of stuff going on.
Well, first of all, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for hosting me. Since yesterday, I have been here as a student, listening and learning about the profound concept of halal and also the challenges that you have been facing. More importantly is the future of where we're going with this, excuse me, with the halal in terms of opportunities. So yesterday I diagnosed the problem as a consumer myself. When I go, and as I said, 10-minute trip to the grocery store would take me 30 minutes. Why? Because I have to read the labels and ingredients and be assured I am myself the oversight, I'm the vetting person, I am everything. I'm trying to be the police, to be the consumer, to be the advocate, and no one is there for me as a consumer. Because even the halal, the logo is different. There are different logos. Which one is authentic? Which one is trustworthy? Where did it come from? Is it from a consensus? Is it protected by the government? Is it abused? Is it like fraudulent? To me, as a consumer, when I see it in the mainstream market, I trust it. I trust it. But is it trustworthy? I put my health, my spirituality, my trust in what I buy. So that's the challenge. Now, it seems now you were telling me that you have been there for or many organizations for decades, and you have not solved it.
With the government.
Yeah, yeah. I don't blame the government, because in the US, it is obvious that the US government cannot legislate religion, cannot define religion, cannot interpret religion, cannot establish religion. So we have to do it ourselves. So the same thing for Christianity and Jews and any faith community in the United States. So we as Muslims, now I'm talking about American Muslims, we'll talk about the Muslim world later. We as American Muslims have to come to create a process of consensus. And as Brother Rafiq said, differences of opinion are like, it's human nature. But if we are Muslim and trying to follow the example of the Prophet, we will know that he was a problem solver, even before he was a prophet. When the warring parties of Mecca disagreed on how to rebuild part of the Kaaba where Muslims pray, he was a problem solver. He was a peacemaker. He brought, in a creative way, warring parties and was very creative in building consensus and reconciliation, and give each one a credit and respect to be part of the solution. That was creative. And also he was a businessman before he became a prophet. So he was pragmatic, he was negotiator, he was able to speak to the consumer's interest, and he was defending his own interest, and always he would come as as-sadiq al-amin, the truthful and the honest. It's a win-win situation. You don't have to cheat to make business. You gain and you assure people. I'm saying these things because they are the foundations for problem solving. In America, Muslims are mainly affluent, educated, free to think, free to choose what kind of future they have. And I believe we can resolve this problem. It's not impossible. But someone has to take the lead. Now, we don't have hierarchy in the Muslim community. We don't have jurisdictions. The country is not like, the states. An imam is taking charge of, this zip code and that zip code. We don't have that. Anyone can claim anything. Well, that's a problem, but also, it's free. That means this issue is legitimate. My aim here is not to make the halal dispute like the moon sighting dispute. You know that, right? However, the moon sighting dispute is simple compared to halal. You know why? Because the moon sighting has only two ways. Either you go by science or you go by, eyesight. With the halal labeling and certification, the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. So what kind of logo, what kind of color, design, creating the process, who is in charge of creating the process? So that's left to human ingenuity, creativity, and really destiny. They want to agree to disagree, or they want to agree to agree. So I think it's in our hands. Now, just my personal experience. I found myself 27 years ago in that spot, not for the halal, but for the civil rights. Everybody's complaining about discrimination, about stereotyping of Muslims, defamation, misrepresentation of Islam in Hollywood, in the textbook, injustice in the workplace, in school, and no one is doing anything. I decided to step forward and do it. And we started to succeed, slowly but surely. And now everyone, white American, African American, immigrant, born, raised here, when something happened to them because they're Muslim, they call one organization CAIR. There's consensus because you lead by example. And I believe, and that's what I'm bringing to the table, the halal issue is solvable, is very, very promising because it's business. You are destined to succeed and to be prosperous. Let's succeed. And let's everyone have a pie of that share, share of that pie. It's doable. And I can talk in the next round about how to create consensus, legislation, law, enforcement, oversight, and let's say if people violate it, there will be like ways to hold those who violate the trust accountable.
Beautiful. Tell you. Yeah, we want to have that insight because I think that sort of insight is needed. That's why you're on this panel. We have our Excellency İhsan ÖVÜT, Secretary General of Standards and Metrology Institute of Islamic Countries, SMIIC, on the line. Can you hear us?
Yes. Yes, I'm hearing.
Good, perfect. And we want to welcome you. We started a conversation about standards and labeling, and we're trying to figure out why we have so many different standards, so to speak, for halal, and so many different labeling requirements. And what we want to find out is, what are your thoughts on how we can become more standard in terms of labeling and in terms of a standard for halal? How do you think that this is going to be achieved?
Thanks. First of all, best wishes to organizers and all speakers and distinguished brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum. This is the main question. In Islamic words, there is a certain confusion on standards and standardizing concept. Still, we have these confusions, which is evident, especially halal certification practices. Most of halal certifiers use the guidelines or rules, company rules, which certainly cannot be considered as standard, since they do not fulfill the basic requirement of standards development process. These documents, which reflect the needs of and fatwas of only one country or a region, were developed by a halal certification body itself, or a group or alliance of halal certifiers or a national standards bodies. Our problem is here. And this only cause the existence of many documents that block halal trade activities among countries, among members, our members especially. So as an answer to the question, how does lack of uniform standards impact halal business and marketplace? I would like to easily say that existence of many documents or standards and duplication of efforts are only waste of time and money for us. We have to make retest, re-inspect, recertified, and so on, which all mean extra money. Why do we do this ourselves to our economies? We have to answer the question, as you know, SMIIC is a very young institution established in 2010 as an intergovernmental organization, as well as an OIC institution, has been given task to develop standards and achieving uniformity in conformity assessments, accreditation, etc., among its members first. And developing halal standards is not only work of us, but is important to focus more the technical aspects of halal. SMIIC is seeing halal concept as a service to, first of all, Ummah. We don't want to halal to be monopoly or a technical barrier. If halal is must of for all Muslims, then why limiting it to or making it a problem when we have solution under the YC or SMIIC? That reason why SMIIC halal standards are here and there for use of all parties since 2011. Last 3 years, our all standards is revised and in the service of all members. The other question, why we cannot agree, or well, countries have this answer, standardization, but it's naturally it's voluntary. We cannot force them to do or adopt, yet we always encourage them. So our members' commitment will be distinctive for having uniform standards. SMIIC has been providing added value and trust to halal products and services with its high quality standards developed for production, certification, and accreditation. And within SMIIC, we apply international standardization system in developing our standards. We consider standards as technical guides, but not as holy books. And as an affiliated OIC institution, SMIIC has been mandated for all halal issues at OIC level, and at OIC, and every time is inviting to encourage all members to use and or adapted our standards only. But we have, when we have a single halal standard but not receive enough support for its adoption, and it seems that this is beyond our control. Although current system has many drawbacks, countries still insist on using their own standard or document or system. As before the former session, they talked about accreditation, especially. Accreditation very essential in order to complement the integrity of the quality infrastructure system. Unfortunately, years were spent with national recognition system, which is only serving the needs of a few countries. It's now very clear that it don't work out well for everyone. And most of the SMIIC members, they realize the importance of the halal accreditation, and now accreditation according to our standard is given by national accreditation bodies of member states, our member states. This whole system will be based on single standards. Otherwise, not easy to be unified, and every time we will speak about the unification. This whole system will be based single standard, and then we be able to follow and keep track of number of recognized halal accreditation system. We say one time certified, except everywhere. While dealing with the halal concept, it's inevitable to follow the quality infrastructure. If the other country doesn't have the system, similar system, we couldn't follow the recognition system. That reason, we quality system infrastructures, halal quality infrastructures is very important. Within SMIIC, we bring halal and standards together to have professional system for halal by applying what has been done for age in standardization field. We are not creating an alternate standardization method. We are using all international practices. In our new strategy, we will continue to take all necessary action to show what is right and professional for Muslim Ummah, as well as what is causing confusion and barrier to trade relations among member states. Go to the finishing my words. It's very disappointed to see some people only care about halal food certificates, but not questioning or focusing on halal as a technical matter. For that reason, every platform, we try to demonstrate that halal is more than a mark or a logo. Halal is like a science, and it requires standards and expertise. Its consistency depends on the accuracy of the test methods. If we fail to recognize this aspect, we can never move forward. In our last 3 years' work, we published 16 standards on halal food product certification, accreditation, cosmetic, gelatin, supply chain, tourism, food additives, conformity assessment, management system, and service side, etc. But now we have more than 30 new projects in halal area, especially for halal animal feeding stuff, pharmaceuticals, etc. As the last word, I would like to ask what we are aiming with halal and what we have achieved during all these years. Halal needs professionally developed standards, and halal conformity assessment can be enacted only if we have standards for each pillar, and to ensure quality and reliability of the whole system. Without standard developed for certification or accreditation, we cannot have a complete structure, and this will not take halal even leader forward further. And as I repeat again, our policies, one-time certificate, accept everywhere. All that reason, all standards working, all the new document, new project on this vision. Thank you for giving me a chance to explain the SMIIC policy and OIC policy.
Please hold off for a few minutes. we will have Habib time, but we need. I'm trying to drill down into this issue of standards and labeling because I got battered on that issue a few years ago, but I'm still a little bit torn as to whether or not we're answering the question. As someone who worked as a U.S. official who was trying to explain to U.S. businesses how they can meet the standards and labeling requirements for halal. And I would talk to the certifiers, and Habib knows I got an earful about what they are going through. And also I was working with talking to government officials in the UAE at the time. And I was listening to what they were saying, that what they wanted. And then we went to Peter's old shop, standards organization, A2LA, and they were brought into the picture of trying to be a part of the accreditation process. And I'm going to tell you, it's a bit confusing. And so we have 3 panelists here, and so I'm trying to get you guys to dig up some strategy as to how we could either make the whole situation simpler, or we can at least have a way of letting the consumer know that every possible effort has been taken to make certain that the product is halal. It's a big hot mess as far as I'm concerned, but I'm looking in from an outsider. So, but I'm willing to listen to you guys to give us an idea of what do you see as a way that maybe we might not solve the issue of all the varying standards and the labeling requirements, but maybe we can figure out an approach or an organization that might could take the lead in trying to come up with some more standardized ways of looking at labeling and standards.
I have a
Anybody can
question.
answer.
I have a quick question.
Wait, one minute. I want my panelists to first have a chance to weigh in.
So this is interesting because I look at this landscape very much like the way the internet was back in the 50s and 60s. And in that time, you had across the US different networks that did not speak to each other. They could not cross-communicate. So if you were in a network in California, you couldn't speak to a network in New York. You couldn't speak to a network in Florida and so forth. So someone came up with the idea to invent a protocol, TCP/IP, which basically was sort of like a foundation that allowed all of those different parts to speak to each other through this medium. And I believe that some of the work that we've started doing with Halal Standards, we started a nonprofit organization, Halal Standards, and its website is halalstandards.org. The idea behind it is to take all of these different standards, look at them, see where we have some commonalities, see how they can speak to each other, and let that be the medium of exchange. And really, the way I look at it is that the Prophet ﷺ, as in the example that you gave and some of the other examples, he really took a principled approach. He looked at the issues and the problems and said, what kinds of common rule sets can we pull from this? And that's the approach that we've taken with the first Halal Standards, HIPS 1001, which is to basically say, well, let's look at this problem and de-scope it. And what we found was that there are 4 primary areas that are common between every single standard, doesn't matter which one. And again, it's taken a lot of time to go through all of these, but we found that each standard covers 4 primary things, and it is also in line with the Quran, the essential text. That is, number one, sanitation, number two, traceability, number three, integrity, and number four, composition. And within all of those, there are subsets which break down how each of those different rules come to be, but it is not a system or a standard of do's and don'ts. It's not a set of prescriptions that says, you must do this and you must do that. Because the moment you start doing that, you start isolating others. You start boxing out different views, different positions, different schools of thought, different standards. And part of the problem that we have is that we can't, because we can't speak to each other, because the different countries don't talk to each other, or they have their own way, they're very, very zealous about that. They hold fast to that. And really, I don't see that as a problem. I see that as actually an opportunity. Hold fast to your way, that's fine, but at least what are the commonalities? Where can we speak to each other? So that's the way that I think we can approach it. That's the way that we've been trying to approach it. And it seems like we just really need to get in front of our eyes to hopefully start viewing that. Inshallah.
Thank you. Didn't know all that was going on. Now,
Okay, so listening to Rafiq, to the brother there, again, I'm learning, listening, and if I step outside this discussion, I also identify certain, let's say, symptoms to understand the issue. And my advantage in this discussion is I might come up with a fresher look to speed up the process to reach a solution. So I build up on what Brother Rafiq just said, and I just tweak in my language. I would say, first, do the research. And before that, let's separate the US from the Muslim world, okay? That's number one. Detach yourself from the Muslim world on this issue for a very simple and logical reason. Solve your own problem here, create your own solution, then export your solution to others. But also learn from others' experiences. The Muslim world is much older than our experience as American Muslims. We are a minority. They are so Ministry of Al-Qaeda, all their armed so-called Islamic values there, and they oversight agencies to make sure. So we have to learn from them. We have to learn from them. So the first thing to create a unit they want to build on what people have done. Understand by doing research, learn from their experience, gather all their standards together, and see what is the best practice that is adopted as American Muslims. Because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Create your own standards in the United States based on their experience abroad, but also based on your needs and priorities and interests in the US. Secondly, enforce it in the United States. As I said, the US government does not legislate, interpret, establish, or prevent religion. However, it protects the right to do all of the above by the religious community itself. And the next step will be creating a forum to create the consensus. Let these people talk among themselves. And I believe we can do it in the US because we've done it in many ways. The halal issue should not be on the margin. It should move to the center. We should elevate the interest of the Muslim community to raise awareness, to create public demand, and create also at the state, local, and federal level legislation. CAIR has expertise in drafting legislation and working with lawmakers to pass legislation or to fight legislation that are not in our interest or contrary to our interest. And that's how democracy works. So now to take it to the next level, once we have legislation passing, then we move it to the protection agencies to oversight it. But also we have to learn from the Jewish community. I know they have hundreds of standards and certifying agencies. Let's learn from them because I believe they are very successful in that. They don't have the anxiety that we do because I believe the processes that based on my little research that I did overnight, that they have procedures and manuals for everything. And we have to create it. So it's doable, it's possible. Then once we create our own standard, we can negotiate with the Muslim world. We can negotiate with the Muslim world. And to conclude, I said something controversial, what I believe in. I believe the American Muslim community can produce and export solutions, not only technical in business, but even religious solutions to the Muslim world.
I have to say something about this.
Okay, he
I
has to say it,
absolutely
so-
agree 100%. I've been arguing for this for many years. In fact, I think, just like you said, in America, we have a very unique situation. We're not homogenous. We are a pool of differences, of different ways and different ways of thinking and looking at things. We are primely suited to solve this problem better than any other region and any other location. It doesn't mean that other ways and other standards are wrong. It just means that we have a perspective that's maybe, I don't want to say more advanced, but it is maybe a little bit more advanced in this area. So I agree with you.
So with that said, Our Excellency, ÖVÜT, since we're coming up with an American solution to this issue of standards and labeling, we have some consensus on the stage, which is really great. What are you thinking? Because you're in Turkey, so it's a whole different situation for you. So how, as an international body, or in a country that's not in the United States, do you come with that kind of consensus, or is it already built in because you've been dealing with halal? Halal has been a part of your life and conversation forever.
Sorry, I could not hear very well.
Okay, let me repeat.
Shortly, because voice are coming very weak.
Okay, let me slow up there. I'm gonna slow it down a step. The discussion here was about coming up with a solution in the United States for the standards and halal labeling differences. And part of the solution we are discussing here is coming because there are things that we can do in the States with different Muslim population types, backgrounds, and perspectives. The solution that we could come up with here in America is what we were saying is can be done uniquely because we are starting on a different platform. But in Turkey, for example, you are a country that has an Islamic tradition for many, many years. So how do you come up with a standard in Turkey, for example, that could be accepted for all Turkey institutions? And maybe you already have that.
He is with all organization of all Islamic countries,
Not only Turkey, but he lives in Turkey, right?
but he's responsible for all Islamic countries.
Right.
Yes,
I'm used to in Turkey.
Brother Hadi is correct here.
Space.
I understand, Mr. Moderator. Thank you. We are not looking the halal as a country-based because the issue is product. Yeah, the product is traveling more than speed than the peoples and the producers. We are looking at a single system, single method for everybody, not just for Turkey or for states, United States, or Saudi Arabia and other countries, because system should be single. Now, if you go the model to country, or have solution to bring the solution to American people or Muslim community in America, as how we will do for some our brothers, sisters. This is not, we are not bringing anything for peoples. We are talking about this product is halal or not halal. How will be sure? We give assurance to the buyers, to the users, not with logo. Logo easy, anyone can put a logo. But what is behind this logo? Is real, we trust this logo or not? our main is responsibility to put the trustable logo and one-time certified in any countries. We are not looking the producers religious or producers race or country based, which countries products. We are not looking the holy products. We are looking only halal food, halal products, and can be consumed by anyone, Muslim or non-Muslims. Just a guarantee for Muslim, because Muslim is for us. If we know something non-halal, not halal, if we are intently eat this one, it means we are fighting with God, with Allah. We are against Him. You have to be. If we know this is not halal, and that reason, a system should make a guarantee or assurance or respectful or trustable system, and then is not belong to any countries. System can be used by Malaysian, Indonesian, Turkey, Saudi Arabian, any countries, or Germany or France, doesn't matter. We are our system for the producers and buyers, not for the countries. The system is for all of us, because we have only one holy books, we have one God, we have one prophet and his sunnah. We have looked globally, not locally.
Thank you so much, an excellent response. Habib has been waiting to ask questions. Then I'm going to go down the line.
Your Excellency, İhsan, thank you very much. I think I asked you this question in Malaysia, in Indonesia, and in Turkey. We, as Muslims in minority countries, are not part of OIC, and we like to participate, like Brother Imam Rafiq says, and Nihad. But unfortunately, we are excluded because we are not Muslim majority, and you represent all Islamic countries. You have the authority from OIC. You are the top man. So please include Muslim minorities in non-Muslim countries. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
You want to say yes now, or you want to
Yes,
say
yes, we have to do. Halal for all, not for the only small
you-
countries. Halal for all,
Yes,
everybody
now.
should be in part. He's right.
We are excluded.
Okay, next
No,
question.
no, we will do. Don't worry.
I have a question for the Secretary General. A little bit of background. The World Trade Organization, Technical Barriers to Trade Agreement, which most countries are signatories to, require governments to consider adoption of voluntary international standards rather than their own national standards. Otherwise, if they don't do that, it's a technical barrier to trade. I was wondering, would you consider SMIIC standards to be international standards as defined by the World Trade Agreement's Technical Barriers to Trade Agreement? And I point to Habib, perhaps because folks in minority Islamic countries cannot participate, which might disqualify you as being considered as an international standard. So I would encourage, frankly, under the terms of the Technical Barriers to Trade Agreement, to get yourself recognized as an international standards organization so that your standards can be the preference that all nations, not just Islamic countries, can adopt so that you have one uniform standard, not having all these countries create their separate standards.
Wonderful idea. Good, wonderful idea.
Would you like to respond? Or do you want to?
No, I'm happy, and I'm also thanks. We are communicate with the WTO. We are against the local works and other country-based systems, a single system, and supported by the WTO. And that reason, 3 months ago, I was with the online meeting with the American authorities, and I asked their support because a single standard, without single standard, we could not solve these problems. WTO and the national authorities should support us in all international platform. I agree with you.
Include us, include us.
Yeah,
Yes.
it means you, yani.
Fortunately, we were able to coordinate a meeting with His Excellency last year between the OIC and the USDA to start this dialogue and discussion about halal. But my question is, halal certification, the process is becoming complicated. Yet we need to keep it simple, so we don't deter businesses from getting into this market. So how can we have a balance between the needed process and simplicity at the same time? Any dependence?
Very, very good question. Actually, I heard yesterday that there was a company that had approached us, was interested in getting certification, and they decided not to go forward because the process was too difficult. And I thought that was interesting because we sit in a very precarious and unique position as certification agencies where we are placating to two sides, the consumer and the businesses. And in order for us to solve the problem of the consumer, we have to be very strict and very technical, very detailed. And to solve the problem with the companies and the businesses, we have to try to make the process as palatable as possible and work within the framework that they have. So we have a difficult problem there. But what I'm finding is the solution is actually a technical solution. It's a technology solution to make it so that the process of getting certified is easier because we have technology backing. We have forms and methods. We no longer deal with hard copy documents and snail mail and email, right? We're dealing with rather systems, platforms that companies can engage with. They can set their documents to, they can upload their information. It gets edited and modified in real time. I think those are really the solutions to making it so that both the consumer is satisfied and the companies are satisfied as well.
I'll conclude by saying that I'm listening to Brother Rafiq specifically and His Excellency. And yeah, it's I believe it's doable. And eventually, companies would like to gain the trust of the consumers, and they have to be made easier for them to apply. You don't want to make it like so cumbersome, so that it costs them, it creates headache for them to comply with your demands. So, but again, it's a technical solution, it's a business solution, it's negotiations. I believe we should learn from what's happening at OIC members. The standards, hopefully if there's a unified one, study it in America, negotiate an amicable approach to it where it's satisfying to American Muslims, run it by OIC. If it's satisfied, create that consensus, publicize it, enforce it. And again, pass legislation at the city, state, local, city, state, and federal level to make sure that there are laws to protect the brand and the process, the oversight, and the government will be on your side to enforce it. To me, I see it not very complicated, not very simplistic, but doable. But it needs some serious entities to be diligent. I'd like to lend my voice and support as an organization. We're going to be discussing this. I'm going to suggest this actually to my colleagues at CAIR to adopt this as one of our strategic goals as an organization, advocacy organization, to advocate on behalf of American Muslims to take the issue of halal industry, certification, compliance, oversight very seriously as a demand by the Muslim voter, the Muslim constituent, and Muslim consumer.
The last word is to answer what the guy was saying. He cannot do it because it's expensive. only way you can do it is to cut corners. And if you are accredited, you cannot cut corners.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much for those comments, all the comments. And we just scratched the surface of this issue, but we have to go because our time is
Sleeping giant.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.